I've known you for a while, and that's why I wanted to reach out to you because I have used a pile of trail cameras, and I find myself leaning pretty heavily on Browning the last few years
Mhm.
for a bunch of reasons we'll talk about. And
Yep.
Browning doesn't sponsor this podcast. You listeners, you go out buy whatever you want, but I wanted to get
Right.
somebody on who knew trail camera technology really well, and so we could get into that. And just as like to comment on the saturated market and a couple of the things you said, yeah, there's a lot of trail camera manufacturers out there, but it
Hmm.
seems like the demand for trail
Hmm.
cameras just keeps going up. And it kind of started out, I would assume, in the bow hunting realm where more people were more likely to buy them. And now, when I do a seminar at a Deer Classic,
Uh-huh.
I say, hey, how many people, because I talk about scouting a lot. I say, how many people in here, winter scout? And, you'll see 20-25% of the hands go up. How many people summer scout? Same kind of deal. How many people own a trail camera? Every freaking person in the room. Gun hunters, muzzle loaders, well, it doesn't matter. They all have at least one. And now you're seeing people who it's just super common for the average weekend warrior to own two, three, four, five cameras, especially as the price has gotten really reasonable. So it's
Yep.
changed. I don't think there's anything that's come out in the deer hunting market that has changed us as hunters probably more than them at least in the last 20-25 years.
No, I agree completely. And I do have a little bit of a funny story as you talked about the evolution of the marketplace and how there seems to be more and more demand on an annual basis. I want to say it was around 2008 and 2009 where I declared that trail cameras were going to be a fad and that they would be going away. And so that was nice foresight on my part. I really knew the marketplace really well. But as time passed, I became kind of like you pointed out. It expanded beyond that original core group of users. It was the bow hunters in the beginning because it made sense to them. Like, I've got to know enough about this deer to put myself in a position to kill him at 30 yards.
Yep.
And then they started to rub off a little bit on the gun hunters. And then, like, I've got a friend that I turkey hunt with in Missouri. He uses them more heavily for turkey season than some people I know that are deer hunters. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's evolved. I've got people that use them for waterfowl now.
Yep.
They'll actually put them on the front of their blinds. They work during the week. They go pull the card on Friday afternoon. They try to get a sense for when birds might have passed through or when they might be coming in, or I don't know. It's been an interesting evolution as far as I'm concerned on how many more people are finding interesting uses for the cameras.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I've said on this podcast a lot, like, I'm very cagey with my trail camera usage now, especially for whitetails, because I don't want what they show me to give me an excuse to stay home. And so,
Right.
and I think and I do want to talk to you about that because I think a lot of people use them and they go, oh, well, I have one camera out and all the bucks are moving at night, so it's not worth hunting. And I,
Right.
I, I always say, like, if you ask my black lab, like, should we go hunting today? She says yes. And so I'm like, just take my black lab's, idea of when you should hunt and just use that. But also on that point, like, to use trail cameras as to actually scout with. And like, there's two different kinds of things. It's kind of like the hunting industry. Like, there's TV shows that are pure entertainment. There's TV
Yep.
shows that are trying to teach you. There's a difference. And if you understand that, so if you use a trail camera, you might just be using it because it's fun to get cool pictures. You might
Yep.
not learn a lot, but you can also use them to answer a lot of questions and figure out what's going on out there. And I think especially new hunters or people who are new to trail cameras, they just go, well, I hang it on the edge of the bean field. I get some pictures and all of a sudden I know when to hunt. It's not so simple.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. There are, to your point, some people use them for fun. We actually have some bloggers that we work with that they're not anti-hunters, but they are not hunters. But they do backyard. I don't know. They do a lot of commentary on the wildlife in their backyard and things like that. So you've got a group using them for fun. And then you have a group of hunters that kind of does the same thing. It's the family weekend. Let's go get in the side by side. Let's ride around. Let's pull cards. Let's see what's out there. And then you've got people, and just because it's fresh on my mind, going back to my friend that I was talking about that uses them for turkey hunting. It is stunning to me when I go up for that hunt every year, what he can tell me about turkeys. Like, and so people can apply the same strategies to deer hunting, obviously. But just because I got back from him, he's like, these birds are here. They're coming out in this corner of this field at this time on these days. And it's like crazy to me. But, like I said, to each his own, whether you're doing it for fun or whether you're doing it for really strategic planning, I think that both of those activities kind of apply to hunters in general.
Well, yeah, and I use them for turkeys a lot, especially here in Minnesota, because I take a lot of kids and I just have the time to scout more. And
right.
if you fall turkey hunt, you really get clued into the feeding circuit that they make throughout the day. And those hens and those groups of toms, they go out and they get off the roost and they scratch along this ridge. They go out to this field, and when you hunt them enough, you see that progression. It's kind of a circuit. In the spring, we don't think of that. We think of it like the whitetail rut, where it's just chaos, but it's not.
Yep.
Those hens are out there doing pretty much the same thing every day till the bugs come out. Then that might change a little bit, but even then, they're still doing, like they're highly patternable. And if you run a trail camera or a bunch of trail cameras, you start to see this and go, oh, there's that group of hens with the 3 toms coming through at noon again, or coming at 1:00. And you can build up this whole kind of knowledge base and go, okay, even if they don't do this every day, some turkeys do come through this spot. And it's almost like I did an interview recently. I'm like, it's almost feels like cheating if you can use a brushed in blind, you can use cameras, you can throw out some real high end decoys. I mean, it's still not as easy as it sounds, but man, you can get a big advantage from those trail cameras out there.
Oh, absolutely. And like you were talking about, and it kind of maybe segues into like some of the things you wanted to talk about. Like for me, if you take that same strategic planning and you move it back into the deer hunting, because you mentioned the rut, like I think that the video technology is one of the more underserved features that we have on the cameras. And I tell people that want to use it strategically, I'm like, the rut is like the perfect time because you know when it's coming. But if you've got that camera on video mode, you see how the deer interact with one another, even if it's a quick 15-second clip, as opposed to a picture with 2 big bucks and some does in the field. Now you see like he's starting to tend, like he noses her out. He starts grunting at this other buck. And so you're getting more information by using that feature on picking up all the information you've got. And you can even do that with turkeys to some degree, like especially when they start to assert dominance and you're trying to figure out like, is this strutter, is all of a sudden, has he run off two of the satellite birds that he's been running with? I don't know. So I think that there's lots of applications for all these different technologies that we have. And just like you're saying, the more information you can get, the better, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, yeah, in the video mode, I've started using that a lot. I actually use it to film my hunts now too. And we've been putting up some clips from some of the BTC cameras out there that I've been using. As far I take kids out, I put one camera out, 8-10 feet away from the decoys. And so I don't have to worry about getting the camera right on my end, because I got a lot going on, and it's incredible the footage you can get. But one thing I noticed when I started, because I don't do a lot of field edge, because I hunt a lot of public land stuff. And so I don't do a lot of field edge trail camera work, because it doesn't, I either don't have the option, or it's just, that's where everybody's going to hunt. So I do a lot of in the cover stuff. And when I run it on video mode, I usually do at least a minute for the clips. And one thing I realized is, you get the deer that triggers the camera, but you'll see in the background, there's a buck goes through somewhere else while it's filming that deer, especially in the early season or the preseason. And I just know you're catching animals that you wouldn't have caught probably with straight, just capturing images.
Yeah, 100%. Because a lot of people, heck, like myself, man, if you really get a lot of trail camera pictures in general, you don't want to like have to go through 1700 because you've got it on multi-shot mode, or because you've only got like a 15-second delay between images. Like when I've got my cameras set on just regular trail cam images, I usually do the 60-second delay. So much to like what you're saying is, like when my camera is set up like that, I get a deer walking through, it takes the picture. I'm probably missing a lot in that scenario, where the next 60 seconds, 3 more deer have walked behind it. The biggest buck may have been trailing. So to your point, like using that video will give you more information. And I can't say that I'm the best at it all the time, because I guess we all get in a hurry and we all start worrying about batteries. But I do try to use it strategically when the time calls for it, to make sure that I have as much before I go in on open weekend or something like that.
Yep. You know, I've kind of accepted the reality that if you run a lot of trail cameras, you're going to deal with thousands of images every time you check. And I'm so nervous about missing something that
Yeah.
I usually set mine. If I'm running images, I'll set it to like a 9-shot burst or whatever the highest burst mode is, and I'll knock down the image resolution a little bit. And then I just try to stay disciplined and erase the ones I don't need as soon as I get them. Because, I noticed that during the rut, I started using, higher burst modes with, going from 3 images to 5, 7, 9, whatever. And you would get that doe trigger it. And then 5 images later, here comes that buck through. And I just think, I think it's a small price to pay to have to deal with a lot of those images to not miss something. And I think that, you can probably speak better to this, but it seems like a lot of people pick up a camera and they want the easiest settings possible, and they want to just turn it on and go, and don't think about like the seasonal timing of it, or why you'd need video versus time lapse versus images, or, whatever settings are available.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because when we do our deer set for the year, we'll have some out during the course of the year, but in August, my family was like, all right, let's get serious. We've got our little map where we're going to put cameras here, 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 here. It takes me the day before we plan on going out, because I try to be really particular about what field this camera is going to. Do I do a multi-shot mode here? Do I do a time lapse here? And I really do think through all of that. We've got about 4 locations where we do video year round, because it just is applicable in those spots. Mm-hmm. But we've also got some fields that are a little longer, that don't necessarily always trigger, because the deer might be halfway across the field. And so maybe we'll actually go to the time lapse setting. And on our cameras, because it's a legitimate concern with some people, we've got, ours is called time lapse plus. And so you've got the time lapse during the day for whatever you set it for, whatever window you do, but it reverts to trail camera mode at night. So it does take our images at night without burning through the flash on the time lapse mode. So it doesn't keep your batteries up, basically. So we've got that. And there's other places where, for example, I've got a trail that I put a camera on every year. I put a 3 or 4 burst mode on that. And just to kind of elaborate a little bit about burst mode, you've got rapid fire mode on our cameras, and that will sequence all of those images within 2 seconds. So even if you do rapid fire 8 images, you're going to get 8 images in 2 seconds. Multi-burst actually kind of resets between each image. It's click to click. To click. So you're buying yourself a little more time, because I understand the rapid fire, and I use that honestly sometimes when I'm just really trying to capture the perfect shot. If I really want something in a rapid fire situation where, it's a fast moving trail and deer just trying to get from A to B, I might do that. But multi-shot, I like it in some of the feeding settings, even if it's just 2 or 3 multi-shots, because kind of to what you were talking about earlier, you got something walking across. If he's really feeding really slow, with the fast trigger speeds we've got on the cameras now, you might catch his nose because he's not moving across the camera. So he might stop, nibble, and his next step might bring his antlers into view. So I like the burst mode for something along those lines. So there's so many different uses and different applications and different combinations. And I mean, it's almost endless, quite frankly.
Well, yeah, and that's a good point. You said 2 things I want to touch on. You talked about putting cameras out in August and giving them time. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of people do, or they make, is they go, oh, I put a camera out, I'm going to check it 2 days later. And it's like, man, if you want to learn what deer are doing and let a place, I've seen so many deer spook from, if you put a trail camera up, and they walk in, they go, I know that's not supposed to be there. And sometimes it takes them a week to get used to that or more, or you got to, mount them higher or something like that. And you just got to give them time to soak.
Yes, and that's one of the reasons we do that. And, one of the other things that we try to manage our scent when we go in there to set those cameras up, but it's really difficult to do that perfectly, especially if you're going to, like, it's an all day affair. You go hang, 15 cameras or something like that. And as you're going through the process, you're going to mess up at some point. So our thought process is, if I can get those out in August, like you're saying, they have time to get used to it. The scent has time to kind of go away. So by the time we start getting into like some really good archery opportunities in September, in October, those cameras have been doing work for us for 2 months.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that we don't like, getting those cool velvet pictures in like May, June, July. It's just not the full on reset, new batteries. Because we pull everything when we do that August set.
Mm-hmm.
Check every camera, new batteries, clean cards. This is deer season, guys. And like when we're running them during the summer, it kind of goes back to the fun part. We got some out. Oh, look, cool picture. Oh, look at that. Look at this. And so we're seeing some of those things, but we kind of change gears in August, if you will, and really get serious about it. And I think our sales patterns have kind of maybe demonstrated that a few more people are doing that as time passes. But I'm always surprised at sales figures as we get into like September, October. And it's not that I'm being critical. I'm just always surprised that, their sales are still strong later in the fall, when in my head, like, I've already like done the mother load in August.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm sure strategies work for everybody out there. Mine just happens to be one that starts a little earlier in season before I get to draw a string.
Yeah, well, yeah. And I mean, when you're dealing with the general hunting population, you're dealing with an awful lot of people who aren't thinking about deer till deer season. And that's just the way it is. And,
Yep.
Whatever, who do it however you want. I don't care. But when you talked about the rapid fire mode and, getting a nose or getting a deer butt or whatever, do you position your cameras thinking like, especially on a trail situation or a travel situation? Because I've started to move mine so I'm like angled down the trail and up a little higher to get that downward angle. Are you doing something like that? Because I that has really for me changed the quality of the images that I get.
Yes, I have always tried to do, at least in my head. This really sounds like crazy, but I actually try to visualize like that 46-degree PIR. When I put that camera up, I stand behind it and try to visualize, like, what am I getting here? Where am I maximizing my opportunities to get pictures? And it sounds ridiculous because my mom actually likes to ride with me. She'll be like, oh, I want to go out on the farm, and I'll jump her. And she complains because she's like, that took you 3 minutes to put that camera up. And I'm like, yeah.
Yep.
She just wants to like tied to the tree and jump in the car. But like so I really try to line that up where I'm maximizing my triggers on a trail. So 45-degree angles to a trail seems to be where I get the maximum performance output from the camera. But to your point too, it depends on like the landscape. I've got one camera that I can think of right off the top of my head. It's by a little blackberry patch we've got, and it's a skinny field, and the deer kind of work their way through it during the summer in particular. And that camera's probably 8 feet up the tree because of the land contour and everything. So if that deer comes straight in, he's not looking at anything, but he's got to crest that hill to get out. So I'm getting the images when he's cresting the hill as opposed to like being in his face when he comes right at me.
Yep.
So there's things like that I do. And, we've got tree mounts and things like that where you can adjust angles if you really want to get overly technical about it. And those things seem to work for me too. I've got a couple that we've actually got on the entrances to the farm, things like that, where, we transitioned to a little bit of a security application there, but being able to really control that angle once you get it up out of the line of sight, tree mounts or things are perfect for that.